Hello friends and welcome to Fragile Gnomes, Episode 1. I'm Dave Jones, your host and creator of Fragile Gnomes. Here at Fragile Gnomes, we discuss life experiences on everything paranormal, spiritual, and the unexplained, as well as weekly paranormal stories from myself and other people giving their first-hand experiences. Fragile Gnomes is about being open-minded and understanding that we don't always have the answers to all the mysteries out there, but not being afraid to step out of the garden walls and see what's on the other side. Today's show is about my first ghost experience at the age of 7. It was a cold winter night, and I lay on the top bunk bed in my room that I share with my older brother. My bed faced a double-frame window that we had left the blinds open because we were watching the snow fall earlier that night. I had been asleep in my bed for a few hours, and when I woke up I pulled the blanket that had fallen off of me. That's when I heard the loud snoring in the room. Annoyed that I wasn't going to be able to fall back asleep for a while, I leaned over the bed to look down at my brother so that I could yell at him to stop snoring. When I did, I realized it wasn't coming from him. I remember focusing on his face and then looking at his chest, and it was clear that he wasn't snoring. I heard it again. I thought maybe Dad had fallen asleep in the living room. After all, the bedroom door sits right in between the kitchen and the living room, and if he was in there, then it would have to be him that I was hearing. I thought to myself, yeah, that's what it is. One part of me was happy with the assumption, and the other part of me was not ready to go back to sleep, because if it wasn't Dad making the noise, there's no way I was going to be able to go back to sleep. I finally got up the courage to move down the bunk bed and go to the bedroom door only a few feet away. I remember getting to the door and hearing the snore, but this time it was coming from behind me. I slowly opened the door and looked out into the living room, and my fears were confirmed. My dad wasn't the one making the snoring sound. He wasn't in the living room. I was so frightened to climb back on the top bunk bed, and my brother was a lot closer, and I could move against the wall and have something between me and whatever was snoring in the room. It seemed like the best option. I climbed over my brother, not easy and smooth enough as to not wake him, but close enough. I settled down next to the wall. He made a noise and said something, and I whispered that I was scared and I just wanted to sleep in the bed with him. Please don't get mad. I laid there motionless for what seemed like an eternity. Motionless, just listening to the snoring coming from the corner of my room. Finally, with a loud ring breaking my fear for a moment, the alarm clock went off, letting us know that it was time to get up and get ready for school. My brother hit the clock and turned it off, and as soon as he moved, I leaped and turned on the light. He rolled out of bed and started to go to the bathroom. I followed him and told him what had happened, and he said that it was Dad, or that I imagined it. I could tell that he wasn't sure if he really thought that he believed what he was saying anyways. After begging him to please not leave me in the room alone and let us get ready at the same time, he agreed. We got dressed and ready and moved over to the kitchen and made a bowl of cereal for breakfast. Sitting in the kitchen, I could see into my room. I knew that I didn't want my back to the room, so I sat there facing the opening of the bedroom. I remember sitting there looking into the room and remembering the snoring and thinking any minute I was going to see what was making the noise. My brother broke my focus when he said it was time to go outside and to grab my coat. We got our coats and backpacks and walked to the front door quietly so as to not wake up Dad. I went down to the porch and stepped on the fresh, crunchy snow. We walked down the sidewalk into the gravel driveway, making our way to the bus stop directly in front of the house by the mailbox. The street light was extra bright this morning because it had fresh snow to reflect off of it. The light gave me comfort knowing that I wasn't going to have to stand in the dark. As we were waiting for the bus, I began looking around towards the house and looking at my bedroom window. It looks as if I could make someone out standing there in the room, but it was hard to see with the reflection of the streetlight bouncing off the window. At that moment, the power went out on the road and the streetlight turned off. My eyes adjusted and the glare was gone. I could see clearly now that there was something standing in my window in my room, and she was looking right back at me. She stood tall, with her hair pulled back in a bun, and she had a polka-dotted long-sleeve shirt on tucked into a skirt bottom and an apron around her waist. She just stared at me with her hands folded in front of her belly. I remember I yelled at my brother and said, look, can you see her? He yelled back in a half scared, half mad tone, where? I said, there, pointing at the window. He said, who is it? I said, how should I know? I know it's not Mom or Dad. I said, it's a ghost. At that moment, we both couldn't get to the door fast enough and wake up our dad. We finally got to the door after running across the slippery wet snow, and when we opened the glass screen door, we both heard the deadbolt click. I think the door locked, my brother said. He turned the doorknob and pushed the door. The door didn't open. We looked at each other with even more confusion and fear. We know we didn't lock the door. We never locked the door. We started banging on the door and on the side of the window next to the door, which was our dad's room. Finally, we heard him coming, and I heard him unlock the door. When he opened the door, the lights and the power came back on, and he confusedly asked us, what are y'all doing? Are you okay? What's going on? He said. Why are y'all banging on the door? Why did you lock yourself out? Before I could get a word out, my brother said, Dad, David saw a ghost. My dad looked at me and said, what did you see? I began telling him what happened and what I had saw. He told me to calm down and that there was nothing to worry about, that there wasn't a ghost. He looked back at me, clearly seeing that I believed that I saw was real, or what I saw was real. He grabbed his clothes and coat and said he would stay with us until we got on the bus. I was relieved to get on the bus and go away from the house and to go to school, where I felt I could get some relief from being scared and feeling those eyes from the tall old lady watching me. The day at school seemed to fly by, and before I knew it, we were on the bus heading back home. I had somewhat been distracted myself from the dread of going home, because I remembered that we were having family over for my cousin's birthday party that afternoon, and I knew there would be people in the house and it wouldn't have to be alone, and I could get some relief. And besides, as soon as we get home, my brother and I could go play outside until everyone got there. Soon enough, my family all started showing up, and everyone was visiting and hanging out in the kitchen and living room. Now, the men in my family, they always hang out in the living room, usually with a few of them talking about something important and the rest of them watching whatever program was on TV. The women were in the kitchen, catching up on everybody's latest gossip in our small town, or all that our small town had to offer. My aunts, grandma, and cousins were at the table, and my brother was sitting with them. My aunt asked my brother if there was anything new with him. My brother kind of got a little excited and started telling them what had happened last night and early this morning. I shifted my focus to them, tuned everyone else out that was in the living room. I wanted to hear what they thought. I pretended not to be listening, but slowly got closer to the conversation. My brother had finished telling them the story, and they didn't really respond with any actual comments, just some, oh, okay. After my brother not really getting anywhere or any kind of feedback from them, he decided to leave the table and go see what everybody else was doing. My dad, who was also listening to the conversation, walked up to the table. By this time, I had made my way back behind the recliner so that I couldn't be seen. I heard my aunt ask my dad why he hadn't said anything. He just said that it wasn't a big deal and he didn't want to scare me. She then said, "Does he know?" I thought to myself, what am I supposed to know? My dad shook his head and said no, he didn't want to scare me. Then my older cousin, who had been listening, chimed in and said, "What doesn't he know?" Before my dad could interject, my aunt said, "Your great-grandma passed away in her sleep in that room, and she was a loud snorer." Oh man, did I sink down and get scared. I knew at that moment that I had seen the ghost of my great-grandma, and that the idea that ghosts And things like ghosts suddenly were no longer just stories that we tell each other when we're in the dark. I want to thank you for taking the time and listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you like the story, please hit the like button and subscribe so that you can get the latest shows from Fragile Gnome. If you have a story that you would like to share, please let me know in the comments, or you can send me an email to the address listed in the description box. Again, thank you for watching this show, and I hope you enjoy future episodes to come.